Rust is the best survival game on PC. That's not marketing speak, it's a scientifically provable fact. So our priority is making Rust the best survival game on console too. The best survival game on console too. Alright Gary, calm down lads. According to Steam reviews, you're not even in the top 10. Hello Ratbags, it's Jade, welcome to my Rust review. That was a quote from Gary Newman talking to PlayStation Blog earlier last year, where he stated that Rust on console would be one of the best survival games on the platform. We've already got the main ingredient for that, the game itself, so the only thing we have to do is make Rust the best console survival game is avoid tripping over ourselves in terms of controls and performance. It's particularly important to get those things perfect in a PvP game like Rust. Gary Newman's never been short of confidence in himself or his game. Maybe he had way too much confidence in Double Eleven's abilities to deliver something even close to the PC experience. Harsh? More than likely. I'm probably gonna upset a few people, but I can only give you my honest opinion about what's been presented to me, and I'm trying to show you guys how the game runs and how it's performed on an Xbox One base console as well as the next gen Series X. As of recording this review, it's been 10 days since the game launched. I wanted to give it a fair shot. I wanted to see if they'd had any substantial updates that really improve things. And if you can take into account the extra 3 days that everyone got if you ordered the more expensive editions, then yeah, it's been nearly 2 weeks. I have spent time on the PlayStation 5 version of the game as well as a PS4 Pro version in the beta. Overall, I've put about at least 70 hours during the betas and maybe another 35 to 40 since its full release across all systems to give you a fair review. You don't have to agree, you don't certainly have to give the video a like, but if you do find anything I say ringing true, then do give me a like and do give me a counter argument, a productive one about why you think or disagree with what I'm saying. Let's go over what I think about Rust on console. Okay, what is Rust for the people that really have never really tried this game or seen too much about it? It's meant to be a survival sandbox PvP game. You against a certain amount of other players on huge sprawling maps with all sorts of terrain, all sorts of biomes and different types of threats, from enemy NPCs that guard certain monuments as well as creatures that will come and attack you like bears and wolves. But always the biggest threat in Rust is other players. The survival elements in this game are pretty light. You do need food and water and you have to be careful of certain radiation or temperatures going across the map, but it really isn't the focus like it is in other games. It is all about the interaction with other players. You can be raided at any time, people can blow up your base, take all your loot and leave you in the dust. You can be shot as soon as you spawn on the beach. Absolutely anything goes in this game and you will never come across a more brutal experience. Forget Arc PvP, forget DayZ PvP, this truly is the king daddy of survival PvP. It's often referred to as just a long battle royale, and that's kind of what it feels like. You have regular wipes that mean that all of your progress has to be reset. All your items, all your bases will be destroyed either once a month or every couple of weeks depending on what servers you play on. This game is not for Care Bears. If you like raising your dinos on Ark, if you like going for long walks in DayZ and avoid gunfire as much as possible, or you're particularly fond of roleplay and quests in Conan, you are not going to find any of them experiences here in Rust. Not on console anyway. On PC there are add-ons and ways to add and implement all sorts of new features, different types of maps, different types of enemies, and it can mean that you've got more of a nicer experience if you're kind of a PvE player. But make no mistake about it, if you're someone that avoids them type of games, you wouldn't touch Arc PvP or DayZ PvP for barge pole, you are not going to enjoy Rust one bit. People that do enjoy this will be people that spend lots of time on battle royales, that really love the toxic side of PvP games like the ones that I've been mentioning. Them few little sentences alone should be enough to convince you whether or not the game is right for you. But then we've got some subheadings under that. We need to talk about the performance of it on different consoles, and we need to talk about the future and the differences between the console and the PC versions. I think it's super important. So let's get some minor gripes out of the way first. The map sizes are way too small currently at the moment. Yes, there are less players, only 100 max at the moment. They have got no plans to increase that going forward. The maps at the moment run at 2.5 kilometers. That is small compared to what you find on PC. We do know that they had bigger maps running during the beta, and they have said they're looking to go up to 5K maps in the future, but only for possibly next gen. As much as this might be a valid work in progress, I would still say it's a negative with the game at the moment. With so many players, you kind of just run over the same ground, come into the same contact, and it's quite hard to try and find a little out the way spot to build your base. It's absolutely the main reason I've been a swamp rat, building my base close to the NPCs to give myself a little bit of extra protection. It's not the end of the world, and things hopefully will improve with them larger maps whenever they do get added. But with the larger maps does come obviously problems with performance across the board, and obviously with more players there's huge problems. Fair play to them, they're doing better than a lot of other survival games. Ark can only support 70, Conan can only support 40, and I ain't gonna lie, DayZ, I can't remember, I think it's about 40 or 50 on console. So for official servers, they are doing definitely a better job in trying to support more players, but that's because that is really what the experience is like on Rust. I think the minimum is like 250 players on a normal Rust average server. And as of recording, I haven't come across any actual aim assist servers, which is something they said they were going to add, and it'd be clearly marked so you could partake in a server that had aim assist or not. Like it or love it, aim assist is there usually for games that require a lot more fidelity, and maybe because it is trying to get towards a more general market instead of just tryhards. Aim assist is also great when your game really is pretty running badly, when performance stops you from having a decent netcode where you can shoot players from miles across the map. Too much and it ruins the experience, no aim assist and it makes it a very hard thing to get into. Again, this is something they're going to add in the future, or maybe I've just not come across the servers just yet, and it's kind of appealing to more broader people, and I can give them some praise for that too. I can also praise the fact they added crossplay, and that is fantastic with Xbox and PlayStation. I really didn't want them to add crossplay PC, it caused way too many issues with PC players having the upper hand with mouse and keyboard, and Xbox and PlayStation is fine. Being able to play with your friends across consoles is still a little bit limited in some games, and in survival terms, literally only No Man's Sky is pretty much the only one that I can think of that has actual proper crossplay. So kudos to them for getting around it, but that does come with a cost. For that need, it does look like PlayStation is £5 more expensive, $44.99, and explains why the Xbox version is only $39.99, because PlayStation do charge developers for that crossplay. Of course, most developers would eat the cost themselves and still make the game the same price, but not Double 11, they're going to pass that cost on to you. So the praise quickly really stops when you think about it. This is gameplay from the Xbox One, a base console. Like I said, I've played it on every platform pretty much and every iteration bar a base PS4. And what you'll notice is that the FPS is just not acceptable. It is sub below 20 FPS. The devs have said and promised that it will be 30 locked, and that is not the case at all. It doesn't matter where you are on the map, although it does get worse around certain monuments. It really isn't good enough in my opinion for a game coming out in 2021. I've shown it in previous videos, I've shown snippets of gameplay from DayZ, Ark and others that show that the FPS in them games is much better. And yes, some of them games have had issues where performance wasn't really up to scratch, and lots of that stuff ended up getting fixed and improved over time. But a lot of them other games ended up being early access or were a hell of a lot cheaper. And I think that's a big issue with Rust. This game pretty much should have been early access. I'll say that much right now, you don't have to wait. If this game had been a game preview game, or they slapped a beta on top of it and reduced the price by $10 or $15 or quid, I think everyone could have clapped their shoulders and gone, you know what, yeah, this game's got potential, I don't mind paying a cheaper price for it, knowing that I'm going to support the devs and hopefully they're going to get around to actually fixing it. If they don't actually improve the game, I've only lost a little amount. It's not just the FPS that lets Rust down though. The desync, the lag, the players teleporting around, the ability to have some sort of long engaged firefight is absolutely not there just yet. There is so many performance issues with it. You wonder how they ever really thought they'd be able to get it onto an older console if they've had so many problems. Yes, we know that Rust is really tough. Yes, it's one of the biggest survival games going in terms of memory and RAM needed for PC, but others have managed to do it, and they've managed to do it maybe a lot better than Rust have so far on older gen. Disconnects are still frequently happening nearly 10-12 days after its launch, and it's just filled with bugs and issues that I would have expected to have been fixed by now. I expect agility in games, specifically when they're online service games. I expect to see hotfixes rolling out every 2 or 3 days. Rust have only actually produced one update in 10 days since launch. It had some fixes, but nowhere near what I would deem what is needed for a live service styled survival game, and make no mistake, that's what this is. I expect bugs, I expect issues with skins, body parts not appearing correctly, maybe a little bit disconnection issues as they try and get their servers running at optimum or dealing with the huge influx of players. But even when servers are quiet, you still find these problems. There is something significantly wrong at the moment with the network code for Rust. And it could be potentially fixed, it could, but it may take many months before that stage, and until then we're going to have to put up with absolutely trying to aim at moving shadows and teleporting players. When you actually take a look at the graphics wise on the older gen, the colours are just so muted, the resolution's so horrible. You're looking at these trees in the distance and they're just so bland and washy. That's not all Double 11's fault. Rust has been an old looking game for a while, hence why on PC they recently had a facelift and improved massively all the textures and colours, really gave a massive uplift to everything visually in that game. Console doesn't look likely to get them update maybe ever, maybe only on next gen consoles. There are significantly better looking survival games on consoles, on base consoles, than there is Rust. One thing it does just about get right when it's working correctly is sound. There's a few glitches where you keep hearing guns being reloaded constantly, even though you don't even have one in your inventory or your hand, but it's pretty visceral, and I guess that's a carryover from PC, that the sound design for this game, while minimal at times, is absolutely superb. The control system that they're using and getting Rust running on a controller, which so many people tried saying would be an impossible job, is actually a really good one. I will give them kudos for that. I like the way they've done it with controls. It's really quick and easy to take gear from other players and move things around. Is it as fast as a mouse? No, of course not. But we've been playing these kinds of games now on console a long time, and this is definitely one of the better systems, surprisingly. Much better even than Ark, and fuck me, 100 times better than DayZ. The little indicator to show whether or not you're crouched or standing is fantastic as well, and I just really appreciate some of the little smaller quality of life improvements they've made to the UI for console players. People crying out for mouse and keyboard support, which this game is not going to be getting, I don't really get it. I prefer it on console, hence why I play my games even though I've got a massive fantastic PC, because I do like these types of games with a controller, because I just can't really aim using a keyboard or mouse. Maybe it's the Fortnite generation that can have their games with support for keyboard and mouse and have got used to it on consoles. Maybe I'm just a bit fucking old. But I've got no problems with the control scheme. After the initial bugs and problems that went that Xbox Series S and X actually had some input lag and delay specific to them, I can see that the controls actually work. And they're the kinds of bugs and problems I expect, and they got fixed relatively soon. Although somehow on launch, it actually was fixed weeks before, but the problem came back for the launch version for about a week. When you boil down the Rust, the essence of it, it's there. Going and taking on other players, getting into firefights, trying to get enough resources to build mega bases, all them core good gameplay loops are there. It's just the presentation of it, it's just the way it performs so badly on older gen that makes me not really recommend it. It's pretty tough doing a kind of review where I know some of you guys are going to go, well, I don't care because I've got a better console. But I'm trying to be fair and trying to recognise everyone that has a different type of console. And I've got to say, it's just not worth the 40 or 45 quid at the moment. Not just down to the performance, but the combination of the lack of content in the game too. You can see the PS4 beta gameplay, which was for some reason better than the Xbox Series X because they made a mistake in the end with certain things with the Xbox Series X and S, where the backwards compatibility just meant the visuals weren't that great. But as you saw from the full release footage, I've clearly marked out that this was from the beta. Yeah, it did look okay. I'm not saying that it's a horrible experience on every single older gen console. PS4 Pros and Xbox X's apparently are okay. Apart from, again, maybe a little bit washed out colours and visuals, and much of that is down to the way that Rust is just a bit of an older game. But the question is, why didn't they try and incorporate some of the more refined graphics? The HDR backport has been in Facepunch's to-do list for a good long amount of time. It's something they've been trying to do for about a year and a half. So why at no point could they not change some of these assets up or try and aim for something a little bit more, I guess, prettier looking? Maybe that will come eventually one day with an option. Obviously, next gen consoles fully support HDR, as do the Xbox X as well. I won't rag too much on the animations and the ragdolls. Again, it's an old game. This relates wholesale no matter what system you're playing on. Rust is obviously 2.5 years behind. They've got a couple of features that they're going to be implementing that are fairly newer, like the tech tree system supposedly coming in very soon, even though that was a fairly new feature only happening in the last 5 or 6 months on PC. But the bulk of the content, the stuff that's really helped to make popular, really popular Rust on PC, is things like electricity, it is farming, it is vehicles, it is so many other stuff that's gone into it, and especially some of the monuments that are considered end game. It's a running meme at the moment, but when is oil rig, when is cargo ship? It is a valid question, because they are two of the most dynamic events that you'll find in the game. They're the hotspots where you'll come across other players vying to get the best loot a lot. They're not in the console version, and so much more is not in the console version. There's so many more monuments and points of interest that are not available, and some of the stuff that was added is quite a while ago, and it's been baffling why console is just so far behind. I've read the vlogs, I know the devs have said they wanted to start off from a stable spot, but I just don't necessarily think that means producing a game that's only got half the content in it. Effectively, they looked at Rust when Rust came out of early access in 2018 and said, you know what, we can do the same then, we'll start from that point. But even then, the Rust developers themselves were still treating the game as if it was an alpha. They just simply said it was kind of in a good state enough to sell. And I mean sell properly at a fuller price rather than like the 20 quid it had been for ages. They freely admitted, I've shown it before in their vlogs, that their game was going to be iterated, it wasn't perfect. But it was still only £33, much cheaper than you'll find it on console currently. The console version has a few more systems than that point. It does have Bandit Camp, which wasn't added till a few months later, and a few other items, but it's still woefully behind. And given that the game has only really got better in the last 18 months, to the point where it is the most played game on Steam now, and it has the most average players played, I would say it's indicative that them updates we're producing on PC every month really made the game better, really made players start giving it much more positive reviews. All that can be proven by looking up the Steam stats and looking up the amount of reviews the game has had over the years. It improved massively in the last 18 months to overtake Ark as the #1 survival game on Steam. And we're just not getting that experience. We're not even getting close to that experience at the moment on console. And then when you add up all the problems and issues with older gen performance, and then take into account we're paying more for the game but we're getting less content out of it, it baffles me how Double 11 could be so short-sighted and so, I guess, money grabbing. Now, I've used this term a lot and I know it upsets quite a few people, probably some of the developers themselves. Don't take it fucking personal. You ain't the chump that's making decisions about skins and how much they sell for, or whether or not you're going to charge extra for server rentals just to increase gather rates. That falls upon the leaders of your company. And the leaders of your company, I have kind of done you dirty. They've kind of done Gary Newman dirty also in the way they've presented this game with the different versions, gating off access to test servers unless you buy the more expensive editions, as well as the beta shenanigans where you have to buy the more expensive editions just to play the beta, when most games are doing it for free, or they're giving it with just any version of the game being bought. You could look at it and say, well, they gave us a cheaper option. Most games, this is the other stupid defense, oh, $60 man. Most games come with single player, even online survival games like these. Ark, Conan, Atlas, 100 more that you want to mention. The only game that doesn't have a single player is DayZ, and that has been a shit show also. Stop comparing this fucking game to other AAA games. It doesn't look like it, it doesn't run like it. It literally is a survival sandbox experience that should have been an early access title. And when you take all the criticism, everything I'm saying about Rust, and you measure it against what Gary Newman himself said about Rust on console, can you really sit here and say it's working how he mentions? The controls are great in terms of shortcuts. I think they've done an admirable job, but there's still something a little bit off and a little bit floaty about them. Just not really up there with what I would consider a top PvP experience. And performance is certainly not there. And if Gary Newman says these things have to be perfect, why are they charging so much? Why have they done some of the shit they're doing with the MTX? Why are they trying to maybe add extra expenses to servers in the future? Maybe in a year when they got up to date a little bit more with content, maybe when it improved drastically the performance in older gen, I could sit here and say that it's worth the money it is. But it just isn't at the moment, especially if you're playing on an older gen console. Now take a look at new gen. Series X. This is what I'm showing you right now, and it's so much better, it's so much nicer. The lag and desync is still there occasionally, you still got lots of teleporting players running around, and that is definitely obviously a problem I think with the network code as I mentioned. But it definitely runs a lot better. It's still having issues with long tail firefights, and there's certain issues with glitches and hitboxes not registering correctly. But it is definitely a much funner, a much more enjoyable experience. It's much more better to look at, and at times I felt like, yes, this is the kind of Rust experience I would expect. But obviously it's still missing the content. I think after a few weeks you guys are starting to realise that what you've got on offer on these tiny 2.5km maps really isn't a lot. And when you take into account the free monuments they removed, this game does start getting a bit dry and a bit old pretty quickly. Sure, it's fun having these interactions with other players, like my Zergs that I've been creating over the last week or so, and doing certain interactions with players, and I want to look forward to building trap bases and all sorts with the game. And I probably am still going to be doing that, because despite the problems and issues, I do want to cover the game because I can see the potential there. But I don't think that potential should just be forgiving all the problems with it, or it should be kind of an excuse to charge through the nose just because we was all hyped and excited. And that's exactly what Double 11 have done. They've taken advantage of the hype, but in the worst possible way. Not by delivering a product that was fully formed, fleshed out and worth MTX transactions and worth server rental prices. No, they absolutely took the piss with the way they did things. Again, I don't want to cover it too much. I have committed, I have spoken about this stuff in the past. I just really want to focus on the experience of Rust right now, but I still think it's important to acknowledge the surrounding issues with Rust so that you're well informed about what kind of thing you expect in the future. Listen, I can go out there and buy whatever game I want. YouTube's treated me well enough that it's my full-time job. I don't have to worry anymore about what kind of money I might have to treat myself every month. But it really ain't that long ago that I was literally deciding whether or not I could afford to give myself a £10 gift card so I could buy a game that I wanted on an Xbox, or whether or not I'd have to save it because I knew I had bills to pay. The gaming industry is absolutely worth billions. They've made more money than any of the other major entertainment industries like music and movies in the last year and a half. Everyone during the pandemic has been playing games more. It's brought new fans into the fold, and the biggest companies like EA and Ubisoft are absolutely killing it with microtransactions and the like. And that's what I feel like Double 11 saw and just really have tried to go for the jugular. Mark my words, when the skin store comes out, you lot are going to be crying at the prices of the skins. It will be on the kind of level of Fortnite. Now I can't stand that crap in Fortnite either, but at least that's a free to play game. The PC version of Rust has always done this pretty well. You got free monthly updates. In return, they sell cosmetic skins, and occasionally they've started selling more of the DLC packs once or twice a year, giving you some cosmetic items. This is a system that I can tolerate, but I do remember a time when you used to get this shit for free as achievements, as unlockables for actually playing the game. I'm sure D11 have got lots of expenses to pay, but they are doing this in partnership with Facepunch. It isn't a direct, I'm going to give you a ton of money to buy the rights. It does look like they have got some sort of proper deal where Facepunch do get a percentage of all of the earnings. And as I mentioned earlier, D11 are not some small little company. Facepunch are not a tiny company anymore. They've made millions. They made 20 million off the back of microtransactions in the last 3 years alone. I know this kind of stuff goes above and beyond what a lot of people really think is important in their games, but it interests me and it's my opinion, and this kind of stuff is what matters to me. How a game performs, what it offers as a reward, and what it offers in terms of us buying to support them. I'll support good games all day long if they want to sell me microtransactions, skins and stuff, as long as they're giving me content. And that's the trade-off. We're seeing from the roadmap and the future that these updates can be coming every 6 to 8 or 8 to 10 weeks. They will be chunkier in nature, yes they will. But as I said, Rust is really a live service game. That's a hell of a long time between big content. Remember, that trade-off is, I will buy some of your skins maybe if you are providing me with content every month. And it feels like D11 I've forgotten that part of that partnership. It's all one-sided. No, I'm going to put MTX out, I'm going to get you to buy them, and I'm not necessarily going to update the game as much as maybe we should or could. But they're not some poor little schmuck little developer here. They're not like a small team of 5 working on the game. This is a big company, fairly big now. They've just finished working on Minecraft Dungeons. They're in charge of Prison Architect, big franchises, believe it or not. So I don't really understand this idea that we're meant to wholesale support developers when we've not really got a history of them doing games like this, whether or not they can actually run a live service game. It's just a bit baffling, it's a bit fanboyism, and it absolutely shrieks of hysteria and overhype. The survival genre is absolutely one of the toughest ones to get going on consoles. That's why big developers don't often do it, and when they do try and add huge worlds with really interesting features, maybe like Ghost Recon, believe it or not, that kind of stuff, or Fallout 76, they have many more problems. So hats off to anyone that can really try and do this. But it just doesn't mean we've got to keep accepting kind of junk gameplay. I've seen so many survival games crash and burn recently. Memories of Mars was awful, Atlas was horrendously bad. There are some fantastic survival games on PC, and there have been some great ports of it on consoles like The Long Dark or Subnautica eventually after a few updates. The Forest is my favourite and bestest survival game. It is really difficult. I'm not saying that it's perfect and everyone gets it right. Ark, DayZ, Conan, they all have their issues, and I've criticised all of them. But truthfully, honestly, none of them are doing the kind of rubbish that Double 11 are doing right now with certain situations regarding the performance and what they expect or what they're going to try implementing, like the cost of rental servers, like the cost of MTX and microtransactions for skins. And that's where we're at. Double 11 are doing things that no other survival game has ever done. They are gating off test server access, only recently admitting that they will open it up a little bit to people, even if you don't buy the more expensive editions. So why were you buying the more expensive editions? What, for the skins? For the special welcome pack that has now just shown up for $9.99 that you could buy separately? I guess this is why I'm so pessimistic, why in the future things like server rentals could become a massive issue. Why are they not revealing the skin store prices yet? All these things, they're kind of acting like a AAA game company, like EA, like Ubisoft. You know, the ones that don't reveal prices for stuff until the game's been out for ages and then introduce online, because then everyone can't really criticise it because they've already done their reviews. Renting your own server is something I don't particularly like, but it's a necessity on consoles. Other games have done it, and they've done it fairly well or decent. There's lots of providers out there, including the Trado or G-Portal. Double 11 are going to be doing it off their own back, that's what they said previously. And they accidentally left the splash page during the 3-day early access, which showed they are planning to charge a different price for servers where you can adjust how much the gather rate is, or to have as many monuments as you want. They're also planning a different type of price for a server just because you've got a bigger map. No other survival game does this on console. You pay your price for your server, you can do whatever the hell you want with it. If the performance runs bad because you've spawned in a billion different creatures on it, well, that's on you, it's your server, you do you. You can increase the gather rates, you can add loot to DayZ, you can do all sorts of crazy stuff with games nowadays, even on console. Aware that maybe they couldn't change this splash page before it went live, they preemptively did a devlog and said that they would be looking at ways to increase value in the future. They better turn this shit around and only offer one price that you can charge and control everything you want in your game. I will kick up the shitstorm of all shitstorms if they try selling two separate types of servers for players, unless they're significantly cheaper than what's available on Ark or Conan or DayZ. Why? Because it all leads to value, and at the moment Rust has not provided any value in what it's offering, not in the price, not in the content, and certainly not in its planned features in the future. Yes, the core gameplay loop is fantastic and great, you've seen it on PC. Yes, some of that core gameplay loop is there on console, but so much of what makes Rust special just isn't there just yet, and so it becomes a story of buying it on next gen, putting up with the bugs and problems, and hoping you don't absolutely get ripped off in the future when you try renting out your server or you want to buy some skins. That's me being optimistic. Pessimistically, or I guess being truthful, just don't buy this game if you've got an old gen. There's plenty of survival games out there that will give you more value, more opportunities to play with better content and definitely better performance. You know a game is fucking bad when I'm saying DayZ is running better than Rust. And that is the God's honest truth. I never thought I would sit here saying it, because in my eyes DayZ has been one of the worst performing survival games ever. But I did jump onto that recently to see what the FPS was like, to see the performance, and it was much improved from last time I played it. So yes, games will get better, these games will, I'm sure, improve over time, but there's no guarantee that old gen is going to follow suit. They've already speaking about only having bigger maps for next gen, so what's to say that in the future you're not going to have cars, you're not going to have some of the monuments added because they're going to simply say that older consoles can't keep up with it. You might be saying that I am presuming a lot, but I'm only going by what they've presented so far, and since they've not produced an actual proper roadmap, not given any direction about exactly what's going to appear on old gen or next gen, I think it's pretty fair to ask these questions. They still haven't even answered whether or not we're going to have to pay for a proper upgrade in the future, which I'm banking they're going to do, as they do seem intent on grabbing as much money as possible. There will be updates, there will be content apparently. In maybe 4 weeks or so, we're going to get the tech tree update that adds the new tech tree system, like I said, that only got added a few months ago on PC. And that will be a massive improvement. I think it's really important for balance that you're able to learn blueprints as you go through the game rather than relying on luck, which is the current system right now. And then apparently maybe 6 or 8 weeks after that, possibly a bit longer, 8 to 10 weeks, where you get the electricity system. They call it the power surge system. And this supposedly is going to add a new monument to the game. And that sounds cool, it does. And if that all pans out well and we see improvements to the base game, I'll gladly do another review in 2 or 3 months. It's just such a weird way to do your game, to market this game as a full experience when it's anything but. I am as disappointed as anyone. I was the first person to break that Rust was coming to console back in 2018. I've kept you guys informed. I was hyped and excited. I've done feedback videos for the developers and have even commented on them saying thank you for giving us that feedback. They wanted to work closely with me in the future. And now I kind of get why. Maybe they'd realise that I'm not just some lick arse, and I will actually review a game as presented to me, and I will review all the practices around that game. And Rust has just been a bit of a letdown. Will I still cover it? Yes, absolutely. I have enjoyed the experience on next gen. I'm never touching it on an Xbox One, but I am still not going to necessarily give them a free pass. I'm still going to be critical when I see shit. I'm still going to be raising points that I think need to be raised. Not because I'm hating on the game, because I want them to improve. That's why you stick around and play these types of games, because you want them to improve. I've waited so long for that core Rust experience on console. I will absolutely try and give it my best shot and seeing how much they improve. Rust could end up being the best survival game on console, absolutely. I want it to be. It makes my life a lot easier. I get more views out of doing guides and tutorials about a game doing well than I do getting some hate bait just of a couple of moany videos. PS4, Xbox performance and overall performance has got to be the priority. It's got to be updated quicker, and they've got to be seen to be doing more with these updates, the one updates that are happening every 10 days. The future is uncertain for Rust. There is no guarantee that it's going to get any of the kind of stuff that Double 11 are saying, and there's no guarantee that it's going to maintain the kind of progress that older gen probably is going to need for the next year. Agree, disagree, pop your comments in the comments box. Just keep it civil, yeah? We don't have to agree on certain things. I hopefully will come back to you in the future with an updated review, and like I said, I will be covering the updates, I will be covering content coming, because I do like the core experience, and I am going to try and hopefully persevere with the poor performance. Like I said though, on older gens, please don't buy this game, not yet anyway. Wait until it's a bit more stable, or wait till it goes on sale, and then it just might be worth the price. As always, no BS, pure opinion, sometimes light, sometimes not. I'll be back very soon. Until next time, Ratbags, laters.